An entitled crazy driver thinks he can plow his way through a construction zone, nearly driving past me as well as everybody else sitting at a stoplight, claiming that he's trying to get away from the cartel. And I've honestly never been more afraid of an interaction with a crazy person in my life. Here's what happened. So the other day I was driving down a certain road in the Bay Area where I live, and a good portion of it is a two-way road with one lane in one direction and the other lane in the opposite direction. There are double yellow lines down the middle of the road, which they've reinforced with reflective pavement markers and rumble strips. And in case you don't know, rumble strips are the grooves in the road which make a noise if your tire passes over them, and they're there to let you know that you're drifting over the yellow lines. So the message is clear: absolutely no passing other vehicles by crossing the lines. The only time you may do so is if you're specifically directed to do so by an officer, a flagger, or a sign. And this detail will be important later on. Currently, there's a major construction project that will take multiple years to complete. They started about a year ago, and they anticipate that it will be finished in 2025. This project has necessitated blocking off one of the lanes with cones, as well as reflective delineators and signs clearly indicating the line is closed. There are temporary rumble strips in the lane letting you know that you're entering a construction site, with signs that state you need to reduce your speed to 25 miles an hour. As a side note, this road is notorious for people wanting to drive fast, so they basically need other signs to let you know that you're entering and exiting a construction zone. Now, to save trouble of having a flagger on site, they've set up a temporary traffic light with a sign nearby saying that the wait time before it turns green will be about 6 minutes. There's also a white line indicating that you're supposed to stop. When I get to the light, I often just shift into park because I know it's going to be a while. Because one of the lanes is blocked off, when you're in that lane and you reach the part that's blocked off, you may cross over, but only when the light turns green. There's a sign directing you to cross over to the other lane, and another sign directing you to go back once you're past the construction zone. Now, I'm sharing all these details because I don't see how they could possibly make it any more clear that this is a construction zone other than having cops on site in addition to construction workers. So with that bit of context out of the way, this is where our crazy driver enters the fray. And boy, do they make an incredible first impression. So I was in the lane which is blocked off, and there's one car ahead of me. We get to the light, we stop, and we wait for it to turn green. Well, suddenly, this guy in a Mazda SUV comes driving down the road, sees a bunch of cars stopped, and is like, "No biggie, I'll just cross the double yellow lines and pass everybody." So he gets into the lane going in the opposite direction, passes all of us, and then, once he sees that we're all stopped and there's a construction zone and a traffic light, he tries to get back into the right lane. Only he can't now because the car in front of me is stopped behind the line. There is quite literally no room for him to squeeze past us and get back into the right lane without driving into the part of the lane that's blocked off. So he wedges his way in as best as he can, but now he's past the white line that you must stop behind, as well as the traffic light, so he isn't able to see when it changes. Obviously, we're all honking our horns as a means of asking, what in the world are you doing? So as a result, he gets out of his SUV. He's a middle-aged white guy, and I'm guessing probably in his late 50s. He then starts spewing all this garbage about how he's trying to get away from the cartel, and how he's gonna drive like crazy in order to do so. He also mentioned some garbage about having to get to the doctor. I don't remember exactly what he said, but it went from feeling like the guy was an entitled jerk to actually being kind of scared. We were all like, dude, you're gonna like hurt someone if you do that. And he responded that he was the one who was going to get hurt due to the cartel supposedly being after him. He then asked when he could go, and we told him when the light turned green. Now remember, he's not able to see the light because he's past the line where you have to stop. The woman in front of me gets back into her car and moves back a few feet, and I do the same in order to give the guy enough room to back in enough so he can see what color the light is. Now, I was very afraid that he was going to hurt somebody due to him saying that he's going to drive like crazy in order to escape whoever supposedly was after him, not to mention him trying to get to the doctor. Eventually, the light turned green, and we carefully made our way onto the opposite lane past all the construction, and then got back into the right lane. I was still really afraid he was going to do what he said he was going to do, as he was going pretty fast. Luckily, he wound up behind another SUV driver who was actually going the speed limit, and thankfully he stayed in the lane and didn't pass him. And in my opinion, people like this absolutely shouldn't be on the road. Yeah, that's a crazy situation. Like, the second he stepped out of his car after people were honking at him, that's like the immediate first red flag where I'm like, wait a second, this seems really sketchy. And also, like, based on all the signs that you described, why on earth could this guy not like infer that, yeah, this is a construction site and I need to wait my turn at the obvious stoplight. Like seriously, there's no good excuse for this guy. But hey, maybe he really was on the run from the cartel. And if that really is true, even though I think that's a complete lie, then this guy has clearly been running with the wrong group of people. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. I recently got fired from my hosting job as my managers were claiming that I was being too inconsistent. And now that I have a new job, I'm stressed out of my mind that I'm just gonna get fired again. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I worked at this place for 6 months, and the day before I got fired, I was in a heated argument with my boyfriend and was already 15 minutes late to work. It was my first time ever being late, and my one mistake was that I didn't call one of my managers to tell her that I was going to be late. I was too in my head to think about anything other than getting to work and the argument. Then I got into a car accident on my way there. I ended up being 30 minutes late to work. I was crying, I was shaking, and I was terrified because my father was behaving erratically after dropping me off. I told one of the managers what happened, and she told me to go home because I was in no condition to work and to not worry about it. Well, the next day, I received a text from my general manager that he is letting me go due to too many inconsistencies during my shifts. Mind you, I got confirmation from my coworkers that both managers were complaining on how bad I was at my job. I mean, they complained about everything all day, specifically the salary manager. She would nitpick the littlest things, even though I have little interactions with customers. And again, mind you, I also worked as a busser and would help bussers take plates in and wipe tables, and they heavily appreciated my work. I did my best to stay at the host stand, but I couldn't just watch the bussers drown by themselves, and then management, other hosts, and even servers would complain at them when they do a lot of heavy and time-consuming work. I would also pre-bus for the servers when it got busy. I also voluntarily cleaned off the floors of the front house. Now, I love cleaning and I hate seeing cheese and other crumbs on the floor, and a lot of servers thank me since it's mainly servers cleaning front of house and they leave late. I never got complaints from servers other than a rare and occasional gentle reminder that they would like to be next sat, and depending on how many tables each server had, I would go by whoever needs tables the most and try to keep it even. I think I did exceedingly over the bare minimum because the bare minimum that you have to do is stand at the host stand all day and greet customers and then sit them down. Then when the shift ends, you wipe windows and menus and clean the floor of your section. Some hosts don't even sanitize the menus, and when I'm given greasy menus, I'm absolutely horrified. I brush it off, but I was praised by servers and bussers for doing my job exceedingly well. If I'm being honest about how I seat people, it can be bad when it's packed, and we have a bit of reservations with parties of 8 or more, only because we're a very tiny restaurant, but we are a popular one. I mean, it is just messing with my head how management complains when all I do is mind my business and help everyone as best as I can. Like all I wanted was to help in any way, shape, or form that I can. Now, I was immediately offered a serving job at a sushi place across from my old work, and this is all after talking with their manager. And trust me, my anxiety is spiked so high because I don't want to go through what I went through this week. Also, I never release my shifts, and if the other hosts ever needed to be covered, then I would happily cover for them. I'm honestly so scared that management will all hate me and I'll just be fired again. I'm honestly so stressed out, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Honestly, it does not sound like you did anything wrong. If anything, it sounds like you did way more than you needed to at your previous job. Like, these people clearly did not appreciate your hard work, and they very obviously took advantage of your kindness by basically allowing you to do everybody else's job. And you know what? With this new job, I would just consider it exactly that. This is a new job and a new opportunity for you to try again, because it sounds like your previous managers were absolutely incompetent, and they were really rude and clearly did not appreciate you. And I think it would be in your best interest to have a clean attitude and like a fresh perspective going into this new job, because I'm sure even if these people are normal people, they will be way better than what you used to deal with. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for considering removing my sister from my life? Because after 6 years, she is still talking about her ex-boyfriend and how badly the breakup went between the two of them. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so 6 years ago, my younger sister went through a painful breakup with her long-term boyfriend. Since then, she's been using that breakup as a crutch to explain away every negative emotion that she experiences. And her fixation on the past has taken a toll on our relationship. relationship. My younger sister's breakup hit her hard, and I was there for her every step of the way. I listened to her vent, I wiped away her tears, and offered whatever support that I could. But instead of healing and moving on, my sister has clung to her past relationship as an excuse for her unhappiness. Nowadays, it seems like every time my sister's in a bad mood or feeling down, she just blames it on her breakup. She snaps at me over the smallest things, accusing me of not understanding her pain or reminding her too much of her ex-boyfriend. It's unfair to me, but my sister just can't seem to let go of the past. Even when things are going well in her life, my sister finds a way to tie it back to her breakup. She's become obsessed with her ex, stalking his social media profiles, and driving herself crazy with jealousy over his new relationships. But what really takes the cake is my sister's behavior towards my husband. She's convinced that he reminds her too much of her ex-boyfriend, and she's demanded that he not attend family gatherings. It's absurd and hurtful, not only to me, but to my husband as well. I am beyond angry at my sister for her selfishness and inability to move on from a breakup that literally happened 6 years ago. Her obsession is driving a wedge between us and causing unnecessary drama within our family. So honestly, am I the jerk for considering removing her from my life? Because at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Wow, it has been 6 years and she is still holding on to this? My God, this is not healthy. No, you are definitely not the jerk for putting distance between you and your sister, because your sister is not being rational. Like, here's the thing, she needs to take time to fix herself first instead of taking that out on everybody else. And honestly, the final straw for me would have been her talking about your husband like that. That is unbelievably toxic, and that is not okay. Everything else for me, I can kind of excuse and be like, okay, whatever. But the fact that she targeted your husband and went after him and is seriously trying to be like, you can't come to family gatherings, you remind me of my ex-boyfriend. That's crazy talk, and that is not a rational person. And I get it. I would be insanely angry if someone said that about my significant other. Just because somebody looks like someone that you don't like doesn't mean they are that person. That's crazy talk. So no, you are definitely not the jerk. Your sister is so far out of line, it's not even funny. And I don't blame you for wanting to get away from her sooner than later. Am I the jerk for being unhappy at my job as I work for my older cousin, who is awful at her job and is constantly forgetting things left and right? Because right now I am seriously unhappy, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I started working for my cousin as a receptionist for her business, and for the sake of keeping this anonymous, I won't explain exactly what it is. My initial job was just to answer phones and make appointments, and my pay reflected just that. As time went on, she began piling more and more on my plate, expecting me to be able to do things that keep her business afloat, but still not giving me the power to make any decisions. This wouldn't be a huge issue if she wasn't always out of the office and ignoring my calls and messages. My cousin claims to have poor memory, and so I will have to remind her dozens of times to meet with potential clients and to work up rough drafts for jobs. People will pay a consultation fee and then have to wait weeks for her to remember to actually begin the work. Unfortunately for me, being the receptionist, I'm the one having to handle the irate clients who will no longer make deadlines. As expected, her business has slowed significantly, and she seems to believe it is my fault. She has begun leaving passive-aggressive notes to make sure I'm taking calls and petty checklists for me to mark off daily. She has also decided that since we aren't that busy, I should be deep cleaning the office daily to earn my pay. I've mentioned leaving and finding a new job since we're not that busy, and I don't have class over the summer, but she said she wants me to stay working with her and that she needs my help. My mom also said that she's family, and I can't leave her in a bind when she's struggling like this. Recently, however, instead of one page with multiple notes, she has begun to write them individually and then places some in my area and some in hers. She then will berate me if I miss a single one, especially if it involves a client or a job. I'd always ask her to please put them all on my desk, and she would make comments about me wanting her to do my job for me. So last week I had enough, and anytime she started on her tirade, instead of trying to defend myself, I'd stare blankly at her and ask if she had started this job or called this client yet, even though I knew that she hadn't. And every time it had the desired effect, and she would leave without finishing the conversation. This has apparently upset her a lot, because she then started raging to her mother, who is my aunt, who then complained to my parents about it. My dad thinks it's hilarious, but my mom and aunt think that I should just stop, because I'm being petty when I know she's stressed out. So honestly, am I the jerk here? What should I do? Okay, I've got to be honest with you, I don't know why you're even still working there. I personally don't care that this is your cousin, or anybody that you're related to to at all. The fact that she's piling more stuff for you to do and not letting your pay reflect that, in my opinion, is so toxic and you don't need that. Not to mention the fact that she's clearly not appreciating the work you put in and she just completely mistreats you in the workspace. Also, the fact that your family's like, ooh, you can't put family in a bind. You have to help out family when they're in need. That, in my opinion, is just a cop-out for someone to continue to be awful to you. Like, you can't just use that as a license to then treat you like garbage whenever she wants. I don't care how stressed out she is. She's about to be more stressed out when you quit your job and go somewhere else. Also, she doesn't keep anything private. If she wants to sit there and pretend like she's your boss, then she should exercise some semblance of professionalism. I mean, the first thing she does whenever there's a conflict with you is go to her mom and start complaining about it. Like, that's really unprofessional and it's seriously not okay. Like, your cousin is taking advantage of you and your family is literally enabling her behavior. It's not your responsibility to keep her business afloat. That's on her. Like, she's not doing her job and you are literally picking up the slack. So I know if I was in your shoes, I would be finding a new job like tonight. I would not want to stay in a workplace like this and be expected to literally carry this business across the finish line every single day. Because honestly, that's exactly what's happening right now. And in my opinion, I don't think you deserve that in the slightest. Am I the jerk for ditching my cousin and her family on a cruise? Also, we could avoid their obnoxious children who throw temper tantrums at the drop of a hat. Because right now, she is very angry with me. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so my husband and I decided to take our kids on a cruise for spring break. When my cousin heard about it, her and her husband decided to book the same one with their kids. So essentially, they kind of crashed our trip. We were very hesitant to go with them, but we couldn't exactly forbid them from going either. My cousins and I are actually super close. I mean, we grew up like sisters, and I try very hard to stay close with them. The issue is that our kids are very badly behaved. My kids can enjoy them in small doses, as can we, but trying to do more than a few hours at a time with them is difficult. She has a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old and a toddler. They throw long and loud tantrums until they do get their way. They also need 24/7 entertainment or they go crazy. If they're bored for even a minute, they start crying and complaining, and my cousin and her husband have to stop what they're doing and start entertaining them just to stop the tantrum. And obviously, this is 100% on the parents. We've never done a trip together like this, and we weren't sure how her kids could handle it, but we agreed to sit with them for dinner and do the same shows as them and all this other stuff. Now, if you've never been on a cruise, they seat you at the same table every night with the same people. Well, this proved to be a mistake after the first night. They were terrible at dinner. They drew on the walls with their crayons. They purposefully crumbled bread to make a mess. They used their knives to cut up straws and other things. They also kept running around and disturbing other tables. Their parents, of course, did nothing to stop them and instead just let them do whatever they want. Eventually, they got tired of that and started crying and screaming that they were bored and they wanted to go to the shops. They allowed them to throw a 5-minute screaming tantrum before their dad finally took them to the shops to buy some toys that they wanted. Then after dinner, we went to a show and they didn't enjoy the show and also whined loudly that they were bored. It was bad enough that we were asked to leave the show. Technically, my husband and I could have stayed with our kids, but we were just too embarrassed. My kids were upset and said they ruined the show for them. So my husband and I made the decision to ask for a different table for the rest of the trip and chose different activities to do. I told my cousin that we decided it would be best to separate at dinner and not do all activities together, but we could still hang out at the pool together and do a few activities together as well. Now, when I said that, she was pretty upset, and she said her kids got their feelings hurt that we abandoned them and that they weren't going to enjoy their trip anymore, being separated from their cousins, and she wouldn't even talk to us for the rest of the trip. We are back home now, and I got some calls from my grandparents asking why we ditched her and how we could do that to them. My sister said that we should have known this was going to happen and set the expectation for separate things ahead of time instead of dropping it on them during the cruise. So honestly, am I the jerk here? Because I seriously am not sure what to do. No, you are definitely not the jerk. Like, your cousin and her husband are terrible parents because they clearly enable this behavior left and right. Like, that is so obnoxious, it's not even funny. And I know if I was in your shoes, I would feel the exact same way. Like, of course you plan to do all these things with them, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, maybe they'll be good on this trip. Maybe because you're on a cruise and it's outside of their normal element, these spoiled kids won't act like absolute nightmares and ruin the trip for everybody. So that's why you made all these plans together. But clearly, that just isn't the case. Like, the parents just let these kids run around at dinner, and then they allow them to make all that noise during a show. no. Like if I was in your shoes, I would be cutting ties with them during the cruise altogether. Not to mention the fact that they crashed your trip. I mean, if anything, this is just a lesson to anybody listening that if you have plans and you plan on going on a vacation, just keep a lid on it until like the day before or something like that. That way, people you don't want to be there can't show up all of a sudden. And you know what? The fact that your cousin's like, wow, you should have set expectations for us. You did this all of a sudden during the cruise and now we had to drop all our plans. But like seriously, that argument goes the other way as well. Why would you drop your kids all of a sudden in this environment if you knew that they were going to misbehave? So no, you are definitely not the jerk because these people have no right to try and ruin your vacation. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.